Hello and welcome to AM Prime here on WESN Content Capital. I'm Keaton Shaw. Thank you very much for joining me this morning as we start another day, another edition for the program. Well, I'm joined by my guest already. He's with us via Zoom this morning. He's Mr. Derwin Howell. He is the co-chair of David Rudder's last big concert, his 7.0 show at the Sound Forge next Sunday. He's with us this morning. Good morning, Mr. Howell.
Good morning. Good morning.
Well, thank you very much for joining me this morning. David Rudder's last big concert, his 7.0 show. Let's start with that, 7.0. Precisely what is that alluding to?
7.0 is the third in his series of 5-year concerts. Every 5 years, he started off at 6.0 when he turned 60, 6.5 when he turned 65, and no prizes for 7.0 being now he's going to be 70. And the show is on Saturday, not Sunday. So it's on Saturday night, May the 6th, which is actually his birthday. So he's having a big birthday party for Trinidad and Tobago to come join him in celebrating his 70th birthday.
And you are, one of the individuals who is charged with putting together this concert. It wasn't too long ago that Mr. Rudder announced that he was going to have one last hurrah. Tell us about the planning and the development of putting this project together.
Right. So I would say maybe about 3 or 4 months ago, David came to myself and Dennis Ramdeen, who is the other co-chair of the event, and asked for us to work with him on putting together this event. I mean, you mentioned it's the last hurrah. I mean, I wouldn't call it the last hurrah. I would say it's his last big, what we call long-form show. But David will still continue performing, but he's not going to be doing these long, what he calls marathons. So putting it together has been, as with any event of this nature, challenging, but certainly doable. This is a show that David wanted to have a good spectrum of his music put out there. I think you will hear the usual suspects, the Hammer and those types of songs, but you're gonna hear some of his other cuts that may sound new to some people, but they're old. It's just that he has so much music that you don't hear all of it, but he's put together a show that is certainly planning for us to wow the audience that is going to be there.
7.0 also alludes to his age, as you mentioned earlier, but you said we're going to hear a lot more than just the usual suspects. We're going to hear, the talent that Mr. Rudder has, certainly, and his ability to write songs. I'm pretty sure there are many more that many of us are not familiar with. But how much is this concert, seeing that we're referring to it as his last big concert, is reflective of 70 years, an individual, a musical icon, and somebody who people would refer to as a legend in the industry?
Right. So David has been out there as a headline, I would say, for maybe the last just under 40 years. He came onto the big scene, if I could call it that, in 1986, and David does and has attained icon status, I would say. He's been celebrated locally and across the Caribbean. And his music has, told stories not only for Trinidad and Tobago, stories at a personal level, but he's a global ambassador and a global storyteller. He looks on at the rest of the world and what is happening, and he sings songs, he tells stories, he comments on world events. Of course, I think his music and the popular songs tend to be the ones that are sort of the jumpy carnival ones and so on, and certainly the more what I would say hit home ones for Trinidad, calypso music and so on. But there are a lot of other songs that David has sung over the years like, Heaven, which comments on the genocide in Rwanda.
Yes, yeah.
Day of the Warlord, in Somalia. So a lot of great music that, and some of those cuts, some of those more philosophical and sort of commentary songs we're going to hear as well.
I think, you're speaking about that, and I'm also thinking about his album Haiti, and that tribute to glory and suffering.
For sure.
In his song Haiti. But speaking about glory and suffering, that diagnosis of Parkinson's, I mean, surely it's very unfortunate, but it's also sad for all of us to know that Mr. Rudd is going through this. But he still has the power, he still has the mind. It's just a matter of, it's time that he slows it down a bit.
Right. So, David did come out and indicate his Parkinson's diagnosis. And you can only imagine at a personal level that is something that he really has to come to terms with and grapple with. And I think he has done that. David is no stranger to adversity. Most would know that as a child he suffered with polio. And it was just, I think, another of the challenges that David has had to overcome. And he has done so. He's coming to terms with what this disease means and how he needs to adjust his life, his performances and so on. And the announcement, I think, was just, letting his people know, letting the country, the world know that this is a situation and that he is dealing with it. He was very forthright in the media briefing that we had. And he recognized that, in a sense, as you said earlier, he needs to slow down. He needs to take some time and take care of himself. But he lives for performing. And so that is not going to stop. He just has to change the way in which he performs. But you're going to still see that passion, that love, and that professionalism that has been a hallmark of David over the years.
Well, let's speak about Darren Howell's role in this entire concert, because I was reading an article recently in the newspapers, and it spoke about your life. In fact, if anybody gets the opportunity, you, the viewer, can read it from boardroom to bandroom, actually, in the Newsday newspapers. But a very, very interesting story how your life has taken so many turns. But now that you've retired, you're part of this event. It's not your first, though, because you've indicated that your first dive into culture was in 1996, working with Mr. Rudder. Speak to us about that experience, which was 27 years ago.
Yes. That was a beginning of I would say a lifelong relationship with Mr. Rudder. In 1996 he approached me to do this concert which we titled No Restriction, and that was in fact a two-night gig. The 6th and 7th of September in 1996. It was down at the Jean Pierre Complex when they still had shows in the Jean Pierre Complex. And we're talking about maybe 6,000 people a night at that. It was a fantastic show. I just saw, I had the good fortune, I guess, to see a video of it the other day, and it really brought back memories. It was a fantastic cast of musicians and performers. And, really, and what it resulted in as well was a 3 CD album set. I urge anybody listening to go to their music source and look for No Restriction, the concert. I mean, that's a fantastic CD. That experience was fantastic. We did 2 others after that, which would have been Shakedown Time, and International Chantwell. And I also had the good fortune to work with himself and Tony Hall on the brand new Lucky Diamond Horseshoe Club, which was a show we put on in 2006, I think it was, at Hilton, at the Queen's Hall, which was a play that was written by Tony Hall.
But furthermore, I mean, since 1996, 27 years has passed. I mean, the industry has evolved, performances have evolved. And most recently, I was having a conversation with a historian who suggests that even Carnival has evolved. It's not necessarily what it is, but it's still carnival because it's still a celebration. It's still freedom. But what about Mr. Rudder and his performance? Has his performance evolved over the last 27 years, or is he still the standard of which we were accustomed to, that level of energy, that level of talent, and that power that came just from his voice, just from his presence on the stage?
Yeah, well, there's a concept called aging, and of course, as he gets older, he's not going to be as capable. But you know what? The power of David is in his music. The fact that, if you hear the opening lines of calypso music or of madness or of high mass, you know exactly what is coming. And I certainly know what your reaction is going to be. So his music has lived on and will live on. He has adapted his performances. He has done a lot of collaborations with some of the younger artists. He is also very passionate about passing on the skills, or passing the torch, if you would call it that, to some of the younger artists, and he's worked with a lot of them over the years, and he continues to change his music, his art in line with the times. But there's an essence that is David that he can't go on changing that, because then it doesn't become David. You will always hear that rudder-esque, if I could call it that, till to the lyrics and so on. We hear a lot of his music, and we hear the rhythms and the melodies. But when you listen to the lyrics, and I think sometimes what he does is he slows down the song a little bit so you could pay a little more attention to the lyrics. And there's where you understand the mastery and the magic.
The mastery and the magic, I love the use of that terminology, because one thing I've always appreciated, he has the rhythm, he has the power. And what you just mentioned are the lyrics. I think I've always referred to him as a poet, not just a calypsonian, but certainly as a poet. But there may never be another David Rudder. In fact, I don't think there could ever be another David Rudder. And though he is committed to passing on and sharing his wisdom, his experiences with the younger generations, do you think that there will be the acceptance of music that Mr. Rudder has produced, or music like he has produced in the past by future generations? Because some might argue that level of appreciation is dying.
Yes, but what is good about it? Everybody doesn't have to mimic it or to reference it, but people do. This year, Michael Teja spoke in his song Hall of Fame, and he references David Rudder. Mm-hmm. People have sampled his music. People have, done covers of his music. And that tells you that people appreciate the music, and they put their own spin on it, and that's fine. At the end of the day, if we go to other genres and pop, people sample and bring back older music all the time. And I guess that is what is happening with David. I think the newer performers understand that for their music to grow, there's sometimes the need to kind of reference the history, reference the sort of fountainhead. Right, and I think David's music is part of that fountainhead. There are a lot of other great performers, that have gone before: Kitchener, Sparrow, Growling Tiger, the Roaring Lion, and they have all been sampled as well, and people have sung their songs over, and the same thing is happening with David. So I have no fear that the younger generation will reference his music and will interpret it and put their own spin on it. The reality is David Rudder's music will live on. The legacy of David has already been cast. It's just a matter of it's living its own life now. Mm-hmm.
Well, just as we're coming towards the end of this conversation, and Mr. Howell, thank you very much for joining me bright and early to have this discussion. Something else that stood out to me. In 1996, your first dive into culture, working with Mr. Rudder, there was no MC at that particular performance. But you've also indicated that there isn't going to be an MC at this concert on Sunday. It still to me because it's quite unusual at some of these concerts to not have a master of ceremonies. But is that just because the show is going to be so packed and we are going to expect so probably not surprises as such, but certainly a movement of the crowd, a flow that the MC is just going to break that up?
You hit the nail on the head. We want people to pay attention to the music. This is a labor of love for David. He's worked with some of these musicians for nearly 40 years. And the reality is the show doesn't need an MC. David knows what he's doing. The band knows what they're doing. We have people backstage that will keep the show running. You're going to hear music that will just wow you. The MC, I don't want to say gets in the way, but as you say, I think it breaks the rhythm. When you enter a rhythm, I think that is something we just need to leave it be and let people enjoy it, and that is certainly what we plan on Saturday. You have me saying Sunday as well. On Saturday, and we have some surprises up our sleeves. I mentioned to somebody we have guest artists, and these are going to be GUESS. You guess who is going to come? And I think at the end of that show, as when I asked David what does he want people to think or to be going through their minds when they're walking out to the Song Forge on Saturday or maybe early Sunday morning, he just wants them to say, wow. Yeah,
certainly. Well, Mr. Howell, thank you very much. I'm very much excited for this performance, and I've had the opportunity to speak to Mr. Dorella before, and it was I quite enjoyed that conversation, but I'm all very much appreciative of your time this morning on AM Prime, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here. I checked this morning. We actually have about 69 tickets left. So go get yours online. And we will be live streaming the show as well. So check our social media on that.
Excellent. Well, Mr. Howell, thank you very much. Do have a good day. And
thank you.
This is the final lap before Saturday. So best of luck to you.
Indeed. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. That was Mr. Darwin Howell. He's the co-chair of David Rodero's last big concert, the 7.0 show at Soundforge this Saturday. Well, you heard it, folks. They have about 69 tickets left. That was just before the show this morning. You never know. There might be 50 tickets left since we've had this conversation. But if you get the opportunity, if you're fortunate enough to see that concert, really don't miss it. Enjoy it. We take a break here on AM Prime. When we return, we'll continue this morning's conversations. Stay tuned.
The best for your baby is at dbesttoys.com. We have the best strollers, car seats, walkers, eating accessories, playpens, cribs, clothing, and the widest range of brand name toys like Barbie, Hot Wheels, Nerf, LOL, Fisher-Price, Cocomelon, Intex Pools, Amazon Fire tablets, HP and Gateway laptops, and the best bikes, scooters, skateboards, and ride-on. Visit us in-store at Southern Main Road, MacBean, or shop online now at dbesttoys.com. That's dbesttoys.com. We have the best toys at the best prices.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN Content Capital.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah. Hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here.
Tickets available at Crosby St. James, Kenny's Sport, Extra Foods, Mart's Liquor Palace, 14 Diego Martin Main Road, Athletes by the Park, and WESN 30A Gattaca.
Welcome back to AM Prime. Thank you for staying with us. We now get into some regional updates this morning. We'll start with the nation of Haiti. This report coming out of the United States, where Haitian immigrants have inundated the lobby at the Boston Medical Center and is now a storefront at the center of Masapan. Let's take a look at this report from the United States.
This agency in Mattapan are trying to assist them. Others are turning to emergency rooms, and right now some migrants are sheltering at Boston Medical Center. Thanks for joining us. I'm Chris Tanaka.
And I'm Paula Eben. Anyone who's been to an ER lately knows they're already overcrowded and they don't have the services refugees need. But as WBZ's Christina Hager shows us, anything's better than the situation the refugees are trying to escape.
Families with babies. Haitian migrants who have nowhere else to go. They have inundated the lobby at Boston Medical Center. And now this crowded storefront in the center of Mattapan, helping find shelter for them. When we dropped in at about noon, 135 people here. Why did you want to leave Haiti? This man, who asked us not to show his face, spoke to us through an interpreter.
It's really impossible for us to live in the country right now, whether or not it's gang violence, whether or not it's access to any services, hospital work. There is no way for anyone to live in Haiti.
Dr. Harold Gabo is the executive director of the Immigrant Family Services Institute.
Housing has been a real nightmare. I don't even call it a crisis anymore. It's a real nightmare, especially for people who are coming here for the first time.
For those who don't know to come here, it's either the streets or the emergency room, where dozens have ended up lately.
A statement from the hospital says the number of families arriving here on a nightly basis has gone up dramatically, and it is stretching resources here.
Some have been placed in hotels, but advocates say they need help from the federal government, the state, and other communities.
To bring a comprehensive solution to deal with those crises, because those families cannot stay forever in the hotel rooms.
This man now applying for refugee status, which can take years. Meantime, he says Haitians just need a place to sleep.
New England is cold, and sometimes for them to spend the night in the street is not easy.
Safer than home, he says, but the sheer number of people we see here today shows their needs are still desperate. In Boston, Christina Hager, WBC News.
The situation in Haiti is getting worse by the day. Over the last year, we heard that gangs controlled roughly 50% of Port-au-Prince, and just last week we got an update saying that's now increased an estimated 60% of the capital city. And with the Haitian immigrants fleeing, it is, of course, like any other crisis around the world with an influx of immigrants, how that is affecting. But as an entire world, we're here to help each other, and I can only hope that nations do their part as well, whatever way we can. Anyway, we're pausing on the regional updates this morning because I'm now joined by my guest via Zoom to speak about 34 years of party. Yes, the United National Congress celebrated 34 years as a political institution, and also the official opening of its new headquarters at Mulchan Suchan Road in Chaguanas. Well, the Public Relations Officer of the United National Congress, Dr. Kirk Mayo, is with us via Zoom. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you.
Well, thank you very much for joining me this morning. This was stated by the opposition leader, the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, that our nation, Trinidad and Tobago, needs the United National Congress. I mean, on what grounds is she making such a claim, given these times that we're in? Precisely, what does she mean by Trinidad and Tobago needing the UNC?
Yeah, well, because the UNC actually represents a certain historical force in this country. If we say that there are kind of two historical forces, one for the true liberation and freedom of our citizens, that goes back to Rienzi, to Butler, the trade union movement, the Black Power movement. That's where the UNC comes from. Right? And when you look at its history and its personnel, its values, its ideologies, etc., and where it emerged from, what struggles it emerged from, that is our history. Always fighting for the rights of individuals, of marginalized communities, etc. Always looking for the economic inclusion of everyone, of preventing discrimination, and of having prosperity across the board and not just for an elite. Whereas the PNM, on the other hand, represent the old colonial tradition. They are an old colonial party from the colonial times, and their aim was to just replace the British colonial masters, which they did, and they've maintained that system of inequality, that system still of marginalization, and really disregard for the masses of the people. Well, and in a time like this, when we are in such a dark place where everything seems to be falling apart. The UNC is really made for this moment to rescue our country. Whenever the UNC has been in government, we've seen tremendous progress on all fronts, whether it be
Dr.
economic,
Mayhew.
social.
Yeah, I mean, you're an intellect. You're a very smart individual, and I'm rather surprised because I think we all understand that it's very easy to make such claims when you're in opposition. When you're in government, the story may be different because the party in power will always benefit a select few individuals, mostly its supporters. That's happened in the past. It may be happening again, and I'm not in any doubt that it will happen, whatever takes place in 2020. But furthermore, you said that the UNC was made for this moment. The opposition leader says the party can rescue the country as it possesses the experience, the track record, the intellectual capacity, and a true love for the people and not for the select few. Again, we can debate the last part there. But if this is all the claims that is being made by the honourable opposition leader, how come the United National Congress is in opposition?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a an unfortunate question. I mean, because unfortunately, countries do not always get the best governments, and right now we are experiencing the worst government in our history. The country does have an option to choose, and when PNM propaganda has actually come and misrepresented, because to this day there are so many misrepresentations, and this is my job as PRO to make sure the facts are out there, as opposed to the idiocy that the country was running on fumes, that the treasury was empty, that nothing was being done with crime or education. All this was demonstrably false, and unfortunately, the PNM representation of the PNM has also had a sort of cultish kind of mode of operation, very, very sadly, where persons have been so blind to, made blind, unfortunately, to their own self-interest. It's really sometimes an kind of education and consciousness raising project, and as I said, countries do go through phases where they are put through challenges or they make bad decisions, but then we can redeem ourselves. And this is where we have the opportunity in a democracy, and as long as we have a democracy, and we need international observers at election, we need to have a democratic process during the time between elections so that governments can be held to account, so that the truth can be known, so that their governance styles can be exposed and their actions. So it is up to us during this period to make sure people have the information at hand and can make a choice that is right for them.
You must forgive me if I'm a bit daft, Dr. Mayhew, but everything you've explained thus far, I'm still trying to actually, highlight the difference between the United National Congress and the PNM, whether it be from its supporters or its parties. The reason being is because you mentioned something of like this cultish movement, but arguably that happens all around. It's not just only with the People's National Movement.
Let me give you a very concrete example. Two concrete examples. A UNC supporter would never say, it's a good thing that the government has removed my laptops from my children, right? This is unfortunately what the PNM make its supporters say. Say that, oh, laptops from my children was a bad thing, and I'm so glad the government took it away. Or something like, lower fuel prices are really a bad thing, and it's an excellent thing that the government has actually increased my fuel prices and increased prices across the board. I mean, I unfortunately we came across this during during campaigning where people would say they would rather suffer under the PNM than prosper under the UNC, which is quite a scary statement, but it is a statement we came across among a select, unfortunately, a large minority, but a minority, thankfully, but still enough to where things are so close, enough to make a difference that affects the whole country.
But even though that's a large minority, doesn't that still speak to what a part of the population see the United National Congress as? Doesn't it still speak to what some of them actually see as the United National Congress's vision? Because even if you're making the argument that between 2010 and 2015, so much progress was made, and from 2015 till now, we've only taken steps backwards. I mean, still, why is it that people perceive the United National Congress in that way? To the extent that, okay, listen, I'd rather suffer under the People's National Movement. I mean, surely that shows that something is wrong in the way the United National Congress is operating.
I don't believe that. Well, every organization, I'm not going to say that every organization is perfect. Of course, every organization, every individual, every person, every group can always improve and progress and so forth. So I'm not saying by any means that we're perfect, and we continuously learn, we continuously reflect, we continuously grow. But that sort of movement, it doesn't reflect on the United National Congress performance and so forth, which is it is objective, it is there by the facts. It really points to a very, very unfortunate mode, which we saw, for example, we saw it this weekend with Keith Rowley at the Toko Family Day, just spreading these lies that Kamala Prasad had to threaten court action about, because it is this absolutely negative energy, and unfortunately it is a darkness that has enveloped a part of our population, and unfortunately shrouding our nation in this darkness, in this hopelessness that we have, and it is very difficult from a position of opposition in a constitution which does not give us much say in the actual governance of the country, and prevents many avenues towards seeking transparency and accountability. And many of those avenues were instituted by the UNC when we were in government. So when we were in government, we actually empowered opposition. And thankfully we did. That is what a democracy is for. But yeah, these forces have really, it is something that we have to confront and face and deal with and overcome. And this is part of the story of many countries, of many nations that sometimes you get on a bad path, and we've been on this rut where everything from unemployment, from crime, from the economy, to the standard of living, to the education system, to the infrastructure, have all objectively been crumbling. Let
me ask you about the Honourable Opposition Leader, because you just mentioned her. 13 years as a political leader, and she says 13 years ago when she became the political leader, I didn't do so for the position, I did it because I want to serve you. And that was 13 years ago, but 13 years later, the only success that the opposition leader has had is in any election is internally. I mean, that is the only success she's had is in internal elections. But with that being said, she was still voted in by supporters of the United National Congress, members of the UNC. The thing is, who is she serving now? Because if all she's won is the internal elections, is she really serving the people? Is it really serving in the best interest of Trans-Tobago? Is she really just serving herself?
Well, that is absolutely false. I mean, but first of all, she has obviously won her superior seat every time with one of the greatest margins of victory in the country consistently. In the 2020 elections too, it was a very, very narrow. We were only 2,600 votes away from government in just two seats, San Fernando West and St. Joseph. We got more votes in Trinidad than the PNM got. Also, we increased our votes to the highest in history. We actually got more votes in 2020 than we did in 2000 when the UNC won government outright. The PNM lost about 60,000 votes, I believe it was, in 2020. They lost the Maruga seat. And then if you fast forward to January 2021, where we had 5 by-elections in 1 month, we held all our seats, just as we did in 2020. And the PNM, again, lost another seat. And the seat it lost is very interesting. The seat the PNM lost was Arima Central. Was not a marginal seat at all. It never has been a marginal seat. It's a seat where the former mayor was. She is now the MP for Dabidi O'Meara. She is a minister. They fought actively for that seat, and we took it away from them. And when elections are called, surely we have increased by more than 2,600 votes in those 2 seats, and the PNM have declined surely by more than 2,600 votes in those seats. So we are very confident in our ability to retake government. And then also, Kamla Prasad Bisesar's her commitment, her vision, her ideology, her caring for the people is unsurpassed. There is no one else in the country, and people, of course, are entitled to their opinion. They're entitled to contest, just as Kamla Prasad Bisesar herself contested for elections, and we respect the democratic process. And the membership of the UNC have overwhelmingly spoken that Kamla Prasad Bisesar is our leader, and as if you saw the video footage of the launch, the slogan is that TNT wins with KPB and TNT wins with the UNC, and we will win under her as we say, as we stand our ground and as we are on the road to victory. That is where we are on the path under her leadership, a very, very dynamic leadership that's been able to. The UNC has always been a coalition of very disparate forces, and she has this amazing ability to balance these forces and take us forward. And we are very confident that we will go forward.
Dr. Mayor, I think it's fair that you've added context to my last question in giving data and statistics, even with respect to Arima Central, and saying that was no means a marginal seat. But arguably, you started off your response by saying that she's won her seat in Superior, and I would say that's not a marginal seat either. Surely, if anybody else from the United National Congress went for that position, they would most likely win that seat. So it's not necessarily, arguably, a victory as such. But, moving forward now, at the last internal election, Kamla Prasad Bisesar, which she obviously won, she says the UNC needs stability. It's not time for a change in leadership. The election is about ensuring our great UNC party is stable, it's equipped to rescue TNT. Now is not the time to throw away all the work that we have achieved. But doesn't the United National Congress really need to rebuild? I mean, surely at what point is there some level of concession or understanding that the United National Congress has fallen aside or fallen out of favor, and perhaps it's now a time for a shift in the direction of the party and shift in the personnel within the party if the United National Congress is to mount a challenge against any political party?
Well, certainly, I mean, when you look at the 2020 elections, the bench has transformed significantly, and we have a very it's very funny. A lot of these critics who really have a personal animus, and a lot of it is not a good faith criticism. They just have a personal animus. Many of them, it's just that they did not get their seats or they did not get some position they wanted, and it's a very sort of personally interested, self-destructive mode. But people have asked us to change the faces, to change the person, and we definitely did in the party. I mean, we have a bench of very young, dynamic, aggressive MPs who are fighting for their constituents. and who are holding this government to account. And we did change up quite a bit. And within the party, too, there are changes occurring all the time. We've really been growing and developing, and we will continue to grow. And we invite all those people who want to see change. Because I have said that myself. I myself wanted to be part of a change process, and so I joined the struggle, and I have been working for change. And I always tell people, if there is a change you want to see in the party, then come in the party and affect that change you want to see. You know, that is like a very practical example of be the change you would like to see in the world. So come in the party and have some skin in the game and actually put in the types of changes you want. Because we are a dynamic organization, a democratic organization. And I can attest from being one of the newer members of the party that, yes, changes are occurring all the time, and we are constantly growing and evolving in a quite dynamic and exciting way. And so for those who do wish to see the party grow and evolve further, come in and let's do it. You can't do it from the outside and gripe and grumble. Come in, work, pull up your sleeves. We invite everybody to and advocate for the change you want. You can't just be outside and then say, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that. You also must work with the people, build their trust. This is exactly what Kamala Persad-Bissessar did. Even after many of her disappointments over the years within the party, she always stuck with the party, and not like others who left and formed other parties and criticized the government and tried to bring down the party. She maintained her faith with the people, and she was able to rise to the top when the time came and the elections came. And we had 2 elections before within the party. We will have elections again, and there is a process. Right? So people should not be undermining the process, because this is the time now to build, to solidify, to grow, not to keep griping about an election that was lost. Right? If someone has a legitimate aspiration to take leadership again, wait for the next election. Don't undermine the very party you wish to supposedly save or lead. If you do, then come and work. Right? Many of these critics, they're just sitting outside doing nothing. Listen, if you love the party so much, if you love the membership so much, if you love the people, then come in and do some work.
Dr. Nehu, you just said that, you just acknowledged that the opposition leader had many disappointments throughout the years. Fair enough. But as we're coming to the end of this particular discussion, and thank you very much for joining me, of course, my thing is that to what extent, to what degree, though she holds the role and the title as political leader, to what extent and what degree is the Honourable Kamala Persad-Bissessar the actual leader of the United National Congress? Is she actually the one in charge? Is she actually the one leading the way? Or does she have individuals around her all the time that have kept in that position because it's easier for them to get their way and perhaps have their great influence within the party?
No, that's absolutely not true. As someone who works closely with Kamala Persad-Bissessar, she is definitely in control of this party. And in fact, there's no one else I can see who will be able to command the authority and respect throughout all the various groups, and to have this coherent vision. Also, her work ethic in terms of she is constantly working and very much involved in every detail, and she knows what is going on constantly. She has a team of people that she relies on, that she works with, but she is definitely in control. There is no question about that. There is, this is very much the dynamism and the growth and the energy and what we've been seeing over the past couple of years is very much the result of her rethinking, working forward, working ahead, thinking about new strategies, new things to do, which you must always be doing as a political leader in a dynamic environment.
Would the honorable opposition leader be open and willing to discuss such a vision and such plans and ways going forward with the media? Would she be open to having an interview with the media one-on-one? Because I, for one, would certainly like to welcome her to the program.
Yeah, well, certainly she... I mean, at our Monday night forums, she's always there. The public is now, now that the coronavirus is over, we have these public meetings. The media is always invited every week to come out.
No, I don't mean in that reference. I meant just as how you've actually joined me this morning, one-on-one. Would she be open to doing something like that as well?
Yeah, I'm sure she is open to this, and I will. Again, forward your invitation to her, and we will. I cannot say what her schedule is because it is very, very packed. But I will certainly extend the invitation to her, and I'm sure she'd be glad to join you at some point.
Well, Dr. Kirkmew, thank you very much. I mean, every time we extend an invitation to you, you always make the time and the effort, and we're very much appreciative of that. So keep well, sir. All the very best, and we will keep in touch.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Dr. Kirkmew, the Public Relations Officer of the United National Congress, 34 years of political institution. Moving forward, we will see how the party continues to evolve. Ladies and gentlemen, we take a break here on AM Prime for WSN's News on the Hour. When we return, well, the conversations continue. Stay tuned.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Canopia students and staff receiving counseling following murder outside school. Man gunned down in Morva. Regionally, CARICOM heads call for end to Ukraine war. And internationally, Sudan faces catastrophe as 100,000 flee. Now for the details. Education Minister Dr. Nian Gatsby-Dolly has confirmed that students and staff of the Monroe Hindu School received counseling following the murder that occurred outside the school on Monday. She was responding to questions in the Senate on Tuesday.
On Monday, 1st of May 2023, a debriefing session was conducted with the teachers of the Monroe Road Hindu School. This was facilitated by the school social worker. At that time, the teachers presented with distress and anxiety. The EAP was also contacted to have follow-up group or individual sessions with the teachers as needed. Today, May 2nd, 2023, a team of 4 SSSD personnel, that's Student Support Services personnel, inclusive of guidance officers and school social workers, conducted whole-of-school debriefing sessions at both the primary school and the nearby ECCE Center.
Meanwhile, the minister provided an update on the Belmont School. She said the remedial measures are underway and teachers have been given the all-clear to return to the now-secured environment.
Approval for early school dismissal was given on the day of the incident, Friday, 28th April, and as of Monday, 1st May, the number of MTS security officers at the school had been increased, and there is also police presence on site. This is to facilitate greater security as the breaches in the fence are being repaired. There is therefore no barrier to the resumption of school, and teachers have been so advised.
One man is dead following a shooting in Morva last Monday night. Dead is 58-year-old Ian Downs of 2nd Caledonia. The killing occurred in Vegas, Morva. This is the 203rd killing for the year thus far. In regional developments now, the heads of CARICOM remain deeply concerned at the severe impact of the ongoing invasion of Ukraine by the Russian Federation on energy, nuclear security and safety, the environment and the global food security, and today called for an end to the war. The heads registered in particular their grave concern at the negative impact of the war on the global economy and on the economies in the region, where disruptions in trade and high fuel prices have resulted in extremely high rates of inflation reflected in increased prices for goods and services for the people of the region. In international news now, more than 100,000 people have fled Sudan since heavy fighting broke out between rival forces on April 15th, the UN has said. Officials warned of a full-blown catastrophe if fighting does not end. A further 334,000 people have been displaced within Sudan. Fighting is continuing in the capital, Khartoum, between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces, despite a ceasefire due to be enforced. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
This May, the spectacular event you've been waiting for is coming. May 27th, celebrate amazing North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Festival grounds, Blashy Shares. Born here, played here.
Tickets available at Crosby St. James, Kenny Sport, Extra Foods, Mart's Liquor Palace, 14 Diego Martin Main Road, Athletes by the Park, and WESN 38 Gattaca Street.
Welcome back to AM Prime, and thank you for staying with me this morning. I'm now joined by my other guests as we speak about the concern for the number of stray animals here in Trinidad and Tobago. I, for one, have noticed an increase in the number of stray animals, and unfortunately, the number of deceased animals that we see along the roadways here in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, I'm joined by the chairman of the Trinidad and Tobago Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, or the TTSPCA, the chairman of the council, Ms. Sita Kuruvilla. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining me this morning. So this was actually raised as a joint select committee last Friday. The number of stray dogs here in Trinidad and Tobago and the lack of facilities to actually care for them. Could we start there actually with the lack of facilities? I know there are many NGOs actually doing their part, such as the TTSPCA, the Mustafa Project, and the Animal Welfare Network. But in terms of, from your perspective, is there enough being done from the local government perspective in terms of facilities that are set up to actually house these stray animals? Are there enough resources and facilities?
Well, there certainly aren't enough resources. As you mentioned, most of the current facilities available are run by NGOs. There's the Port of Spain, TTSPCA Port of Spain facility. We also have one a shelter in Bacolet in Tobago. There's a sanctuary in South Urapooch run by Animals Alive. And there are a number of other groups that house animals in sort of small scale sort of shelters or even almost home environments. But in terms of government facilities, I understand that the San Fernando Pound is now operational. So that is really the only government-run facility in the country. And it is really completely inadequate for what we're facing now with the numbers of stray animals on the road.
Well, let's speak about those numbers because according to one government minister, he's suggesting that at any given period, in any area across TNT, you can probably count roughly 100 stray dogs roaming the streets. I mean, the numbers have gotten so terrible, especially coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. To what degree has the COVID-19 pandemic affected the ability of dog owners or pet owners to actually take care of their best friends?
Well, in Trinidad, there's been a history of abandonment of unwanted animals. I mean, this has always been a problem. People just leave litters by the side of the road. If they don't want animals, if the female dog or cat has been producing too many litters, they think nothing of just abandoning them somewhere. So with that history of abandonment, you are actually generating quite a large population of strays. COVID really took a toll on owners, pet owners. Costs of pet food and other supplies has gone up significantly. And also often people have had to move from their homes. We've had people who've been evicted. We've had people who had to move into apartments. And many of these new apartment buildings, HDC apartments and HDC developments do not allow pets. So people have just, in many cases, I think to a very great extent, abandon the animals. There aren't sort of easily available facilities to house these animals. And so people there's just a high level of abandonment. When we get calls on a daily basis where pet owners will say, listen, I have to give up my 2 dogs, my 3 dogs, my 5 cats or whatever. And I don't want to drop them on the side of the road, so you need to take them. So even when we are very overstretched, we have to make an assessment about what is the best thing for the animal. And if it is likely that the owner is going to abandon the animal, then we will take it in, even if we honestly don't have the space anymore. We are constantly stretched for space.
I'll come back to that issue of space in a moment. But it's very unfortunate that even those who want to take care of the animals or their pets, they just simply cannot afford to. In some instances, they can't even look after themselves. But there's another side of it, and that is ignorant owners. I know of one example where an owner refused to have their dog spayed. The dog went into heat, and as much as the neighbors tried their best to actually, secure the dog, unfortunately, she became pregnant. But up until now, there's no clue as to what's even happened with her puppies. So, is there a high prevalence of ignorance as well within the population that they just simply don't care?
There are those who don't care or who treat any kind of intervention or offer of help as an insult to their capabilities to look after their own animals. But I think there's a growing recognition that spaying is important and that it does improve the health of the animal and improve the life of the owner because there's less kind of confusion around with everything related to females coming on heat and so on. So there's a growing recognition that spaying is something desirable, and a number of the NGOs have really risen to the task of trying to offer low-cost alternatives. So you have groups like, Animal Welfare Network really started or launched the low-cost spay program in 2005. So that was like one of the first initiatives. Then you have Animals 360, focuses on providing low-cost spay services. TTSPCA does as well. We offer a low-cost clinic, and a number of the vet clinics do periodically. So there's a recognition, there's a need for this, and a lot of people do participate, but not enough. And the thing is, the services have to be very accessible and very affordable for people to take advantage of them. And if you don't actually sometimes bring services to people, they won't access them. Mm-hmm. And there's really no legal requirement to have your pet spayed. And this is something we should be looking at a lot more seriously.
Mm-hmm. Is there any legal, any ramifications in place for individuals who abandon their pets? I mean, it's very hard to if there's a dog without a collar or microchip to actually pin them back to their owner. But in instances of which that can be done, or we are aware of who the owner is, are there any repercussions for their actions?
Not the only provision that penalizes abandonment is that in the Dog Control Act, that where there's an abandonment of a Class A dog is an offense. But in terms of other dogs, Class B dogs as they're called, or other dogs that are not classified as Class A or dangerous, potentially dangerous, there's really no provision that makes abandonment an offense.
Mm-hmm. Let's just to clarify, a Class A dog is a pit bull, a Filo Brasileiro, a Dogo Argentina, or a Japanese Tosa. Let's just clarify that one time.
American Bully, there are actually six breeds, but yes, I mean the ones that you commonly see in Trinidad are pits and American Bullies. Those are the two most common that people are now breeding again in great numbers because nothing was done about the legislation. So, and we are getting those abandoned as well. I mean,
well, but then how do you, if those are abandoned, how do we even deal with those dogs who sometimes an individual can't even approach them, dependent upon how they were raised? I mean, even some of these dogs are abused to the extent that they don't even know how to approach a human being anymore without showing some signs of aggression, purely out of fear. So how do institutions, organizations such as your own actually deal with the instances of where Class A dogs are abandoned?
Well, we have done, we take in Class A dogs when we have to, when they're given up and so on. And we have also picked up many Class A dogs. People call us, either they're very concerned about the welfare of the animal or they're concerned about their own welfare. We've had people call us because they're afraid to leave their house because a pit bull has turned up and curled up in the garage or something. And when we can, we go out, and our staff are pretty accustomed. They have a lot of experience dealing with dogs. And we will try to bring in the animal. And a number of the NGOs have done the same thing. They will try to respond, and they will, try to pick up the injured animal. But it's far from ideal. I think if we're going to tackle this problem at all, you do need to have a comprehensive plan. Mm-hmm. This is a population control problem to a great extent. So there are a number of elements that you would need to put in place to deal with a population control program. but you need to have some kind of centralized mechanism. You have a lot of NGOs doing their part, but unless we have a centralized mechanism and a plan that we're putting in place, and that has to have significant government input and support, we're really not going to make a dent in the problem.
So simply formulating and passing legislation is not the only answer. It's an all-around effort, and there are other factors such as the mechanisms of which you just used as an example are necessary. But let me move forward now to the work that organizations such as your own does and the role and its impacts. Let's start off where we left off with regards to space. The facilities through these NGO organizations, is there enough space given the number of animals that we now seeing on the streets?
There's never enough space. That you can build 2 more shelters and you can fill them up in a week. There's just not enough space. The demands on the shelter facilities are just overwhelming. I mean, as I say, if you spend one day at the TSPCA and you listen to the calls that come in, the constant calls that come in, and they are, to a great extent, it's people wanting to give up animals. Dogs and particularly cats now. There's a population explosion of cats in the country. So people, people want to give up animals, or people pick up animals off the road and rescue them, and then need to find somewhere to take them. And there's just never enough space. Everybody's full. All the spaces are filled. It's a constant problem.
And ultimately, Ms. Kuruvilla, is there any designated period of which an animal is taken care of, or before it has to be put down? I mean, that's a very difficult decision. I hate the thought of it, but I mean, you guys working at these organizations sometimes, or not sometimes, many a times have to make these difficult decisions. Is it like a designated period, or is it now that even given the numbers, that in instances you might not even have a choice?
Euthanasia is a very thorny subject. It is the topic that divides NGOs across the board in many countries. Some people feel that it is a step that should never be taken. However, as I say, we deal with overwhelming numbers, and we have to make decisions. Do we turn people away and say, no, we don't have space, if we think that they are likely to abandon the animals, or the fate of the animal will be worse? So we have to think about, at the end of the day, what will the animal suffer more if it is turned away from a shelter than if it is taken in, and maybe it has to be humanely euthanized because there's no space, or the animal is in very, very poor condition, or it is unlikely to be rehomed in a reasonable amount of time. Now, our facility is not a sanctuary. We have never claimed that. Our facility is classified as an open admission shelter. So it means that really we try not to turn away cases that need to be taken in. We do an assessment when animals come into the shelter. And if we don't have the space, if the animal's in poor condition with chronic, let's say, skin problems or problems of temperament or poor behavior, we may euthanize in a pretty short space of time. If we think that an animal has potential for rehoming, I mean, we keep them. We invest a lot in the animals that we take in. They're all vaccinated, they're wormed, we treat them for parasites, we spay and neuter them. We spend a lot of time trying to socialize them and make them rehomable. And we have we have dogs that sit in the shelter for 8 months, a year, until they get homes, because we really think they have the potential to get a home, and we've invested a lot in them. But with sheer numbers coming in, and sometimes, well, some of these dogs that come in, maybe street dogs, they cannot tolerate being in a shelter. You know, it's a stressful environment. It's an institution, really. There's a lot of noise. The animals lose control over their own lives that they may have to a greater or less extent on the street. You know, and some thrive. Some dogs thrive in the shelter. They do really well. They, you know, and they settle in and they're fine. Others do not. They retreat into themselves. They become fearful or timid, and then they're very, very hard to rehome. We do have a foster program, and we try to move like very young animals into the foster program, or sometimes those that do need a certain amount of rehabilitation, you know, because they've been abused or neglected. And we do try through the foster program where they go into homes and they are rehabilitated in that way. But there are limits to the amount of fosters available as well.
But what about adoption? I mean, as much as we're seeing individuals who unfortunately have had to I never like to say that they have to abandon their dogs. I think that is still a very cruel suggestion. But there are those who are no longer able to take care of their pets. Are we also seeing those who are coming forward and adopting more? Because there are some people who would say, I'd just rather go to a breeder and buy a purebred dog or get this dog or whatnot. And unfortunately, those within such shelters, they're forgotten, they're left behind. But do we see people more and more now willing to adopt and coming forward to adopt?
Yes, we are constantly promoting our animals for adoption, right? And we do get, I mean, the figures vary from year to year. We had fantastic adoptions in 2020 when people were locked down at home. We had, I think we had some of our largest numbers. We adopted out almost 500 dogs and cats during the COVID period because people were home and they were, interested, and the children were home and so on. And then adoptions dropped off dramatically in 2021 and 22. But we have steady adoptions. And what we also try to do with people who call us to give up their animals, we encourage them to promote them on social media, and we do that as well. We promote animals for adoption through Animal Welfare Network for the owners, and a lot of them get them adopted that way, and they don't ever have to come into the shelter. But the shelter is constantly promoting adoptions. We partner with dog food producing companies. We have adoption drives. As I say, all the animals that go out are spayed and neutered. They go out with a collar and an ID tag. They're vaccinated and everything. They're in good health. And our adoption fees are minimal. I mean, we ask $350 to adopt a dog from our shelter, and you are getting an animal that's in really good condition, spayed and everything, and a collar and an ID tag. There's not much more we can do.
But Ms. Curva, do you think ultimately, that we would be able to resolve this situation of the number of strays on the streets? Ultimately, do you think, it's no easy task, but could it be done?
I think it could be done. You have to have the impetus to do it. I had mentioned at the Joint Select Committee that we should look at some of the other islands. Antigua has a dog registration and control authority, and they have dog control officers who implement this legislation, and they seek to register, license, and ID tag their dog population. Bahamas has an Animal Protection and Control Board. So these are centralized authorities that can look at the whole situation in the island. And of course, these are islands with where tourism is really important. So they cannot afford to have stray dogs all over the place. I mean, visitors do not want to have to see this. It affects many of them quite badly, and it puts them off visiting the country.
Well, Ms. Kuruvilla, sorry, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, we have this opportunity here because they recently proclaimed legislation, the Animal Diseases and Importation Act, also creates a central, an advisory committee to the Minister of Agriculture. And that ministry has taken on the role of animal welfare and also potentially the formation of dog control plans and so on. So there is the opportunity created in that law to form a sort of oversight body that could come up with the necessary plans and gather together the stakeholders involved in such an effort.
Well, we're more or less out of time. I just have to very quickly ask you, I mean, people can go to TTSBCA's social media page and see the work that you all are doing, as well as other NGOs who are linked also to the TTSBCA page. But if it weren't for the private sector, could such organizations continue to function? If it weren't for the private sector, there would obviously be a lot more animals roaming freely on the streets here in TNT.
Certainly. I think the efforts of the NGOs to promote spays and neuters, the efforts of the veterinary community to support these kinds of activities, and to take on low-cost work and take on cuts in their own income has been laudable. And but I think the problem, the situation is of such magnitude that you do need to government intervention.
Ms. Sita Kuruvilla, thank you so much for joining me this morning for this discussion. And I encourage anybody watching AM Prime this morning to do their part. It's not easy. It is costly. But I see pet store owners donating to the shelters all the time. I see private citizens donating to these shelters all the time. Whether it be just 1 pound of dog food or kitten food or any product that you can donate. Well, listen, we always give to foster homes, but we always tend to forget dogs are man's best friend, so we need to take care of them as well. Ms. Kuruvilla, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for AM Prime this morning. Thank you so much for starting your day with me. It's always a pleasure, and it is a privilege that I'm able to do that with you. And in your day ahead, I only wish you good things, positive things. Make it your day. May it be a productive one. And as I always say, do your part. Always be the bigger person. Be mature, be rational. And moving forward, TNT could be just a little bit sweeter. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been AM Prime. I'm Keith Shaw, and I'm very fortunate that tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I get to start my day with you again. See you then. Bye-bye.
WESN